AI is not going anywhere. It's here to stay. I definitely see a world where it's a combination of really grounding your brand in something that people can truly get to know, identify with, and connect with, because now we're getting personalization to the next level. AI can really help is create that sense of delight.
Meet Angela Betancourt, the founder and CEO of Betancourt Group, a global communications specialist with over 20 years of experience. She helps organizations and community leaders reach their communication and marketing goals through multicultural strategies.
I feel like my ChatGPT knows me, which is weird to say. It stores chat conversations, right? It stores things that I've said in the past so it can reference.
What actually happens is the chat interface takes that whole history and sends it to the LLM for every prompt you type. It doesn't store anything. The LLM's not remembering everything. Web interface is remembering things for you. Do you think it's good that the model has all these personal things about you?
That's a really great question.
Welcome back, everybody, to the AI for Business Owners podcast. I am, as always, your host, Jeff Torello. With me, my guest today is Angela Betancourt, and I want her to introduce herself. Angela, tell the folks who you are and what's going on.
Hi, well, first and foremost, Jeff, thank you so much for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here. As you just said, my name is Angela Betancourt. I'm the founder and CEO of the Betancourt Group. We are a small but mighty PR integrated marketing and PR company working in the conservation, environmental, social impact spaces. And AI has been so fascinating to me. So I'm just glad we can be here to talk all things connected to that.
Perfect. No, that's great. One of the things that I tend to like to ask folks in general is, what's your personal, we'll talk about it at a more deep level, but what's your sort of personal experience with AI so far? Maybe I don't know if it's the first time you use ChatGPT or whatever the right answer is there, but what's that look like for you?
It's an exploration. It's an experiment for me. I'm always fascinated with what's possible. I get some of these AI newsletters that give you these prompt ideas and things like that. So I'm constantly in there asking it questions, building up a memory bank, if you will. So I feel like my ChatGPT knows me at this point, which is weird to say, very sci-fi, but also cool. So for me, it's really been an exercise in brainstorming, which is what I use it the most for. And I brainstorm all kinds of things, toy ideas and activities for my son that are not screen connected. I find ChatGPT is really good at saying ideas for mini road trips. So I'll say, what's a great place to go 2 hours within this city? And it just gives me so many great ideas that I never would have thought of, or would have taken me a long time to research. So I use it for all kinds of things, and it's super interesting to see what's possible on there.
I want to pick up on one of the comments that you made. I'm just curious what your view is. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to the question I'm about to ask you, so I don't want you to be... You said my ChatGPT and it knows me. Is that a positive or a negative, or is there...
I don't know yet. I think it's weird. I mean, obviously it doesn't know me, right? It just basically collects...
Right.
It stores chat conversations, right? It stores things that I've said in the past, so it can reference things that I said yesterday in a question. So in that regard, it does know me, right? It knows our chat history, but I don't think it knows me.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Let's review for a second, because I think it's helpful. I might have mentioned this in previous podcasts, but it might be helpful for the audience and potentially for you to kind of grasp today what's sort of happening. The actual AI, so let's say GPT-5, let's just pick that model, right? In and of itself, the AI doesn't have memory. So I know that sounds weird, because when you're using the chat interface and you've got all your conversations on the left and you can click on one and you can type and it picks up where it left off. But what you may not realize is that what actually happens is the chat interface takes that whole history and sends it to the LLM for every prompt you type. It doesn't store anything. The LLM doesn't have memory yet. I know it's being worked on in a lot of ways, but for the moment, it's not that it's fake. I don't want you to get that impression from my response, but it's sort of like a smoke and mirrors thing. The LLM's not remembering everything. The web interface is remembering things for you, and then it's sending it to the LLM each time. And where this becomes a problem is all LLMs have what's known as a context window, and it's basically the amount of information you can send it in one prompt. And if you have a long-running conversation, months and months of history in that conversation, at a certain point, you'll exceed that context window, that maximum prompt size. And so the way the system works is first in, first out. So the very first prompt you wrote originally to start that conversation is the first thing that gets lost in memory. And what that means is that the longer that conversation goes on, the dumber the conversation seems to get, where you finally are like, wait a minute, what are you answering? That doesn't make any sense. And again, this is back to because it doesn't really have memory. It's just this sort of parlor trick. I don't think it's negative, but what I want to say is some of the information just today, you can tell ChatGPT to remember this or give it memories and do things like there's all sorts of, again, these are all UI kind of tricks. But for example, one of the things that I'm looking forward to, especially when we're talking agentic, and I'll just bring this up as a thing to try and get around to the question I wanted to ask. Let's say for the sake of discussion, my preference is aisle seats on planes when I'm traveling alone. But if I'm traveling with my wife, window seats are fine. I don't know. I'm making something up, right? Can I have two preferences or two memories? And can I have it change based on the content? Like right now, I don't get that, right? I want that, but obviously that's where we're going to go. It's what we're going to get to. I was more trying to ask the question of, do you think it's good knowing that everything you type in any LLM gets used to train the model for the future? Do you think it's good that the model has all these personal things about you stored?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I just want to kind of circle back on something that you said. So I appreciate you really sharing and getting into this conversation around memory because, one, eventually in this conversation, I want to hear your thoughts on when, because it sounds like that's a when situation, when there's a memory situation. I'd love to get your take on when you think that's happening, kind of where we are to set that up. But I think everything that you're saying, I think is a really important fact about ChatGPT and how it's being used. And I'm just hearing and reading about these different stories and people's dependency on ChatGPT.
Right.
And I commented on kind of a news article not that long ago about ChatGPT is not therapy. It's crazy in a way and a little bit scary in a way that it's being used that way. And for me, it's a grain of ChatGPT is just another tool alongside other things that I do and have. I take it with a grain of salt, if you will. So it is fun to put stuff in there, but there's a part of me that understands this is not a person. I'm not talking to another human being. Like this is just another tool. It's an interesting tool. It's fun to experiment with that tool. And a part of me is really fascinated with how people are using and their growing reliance on ChatGPT and other platforms like this, the Geminis and stuff, that make me a little bit nervous because on one side, I think it is interesting and fun. And I do see it like, yeah, it knows me, but deep down, I'm not thinking this is my
Right.
best friend. And so I find it fascinating. And I think this is something like anthropologists and sociologists will be studying for many
Right.
years.
Completely.
This dynamic that we have humans with, you know, LLMs. So I think it's really interesting that you bring that up about the memory. And then just to kind of circle back on your so again, there's a part of me, right, that knows everything that's being typed into these models is being used to train. And so a part of me is aware that when I type something in there, it's going into
Right.
that's bigger. It's being used to train. It's being used in the bigger scheme of things. So there is a part of me that knows that. And I think that part of me also makes me selective about what I'm putting in there, if that makes
Sure.
sense.
Yes.
I'm not like pouring my whole heart deep down feelings into ChatGPT. I'm still very like aware of what I'm sharing.
Well, and actually, here, it's an easier way to talk about it. Like, let's take it away from the personal side and make it the business side, right? So you could, for the discussion purposes, you could share, let's say, next year's product roadmap with ChatGPT for your company, and then have it iterate with you on tweaks and updates and changes and what competitors might be doing, et cetera. Anyone could. And it doesn't have to be your personal business. It could be the company you work for. It could be a very large company, right? Which is that capability exists. But what I really mean when I say, privacy, security, et cetera, is this scenario, which is just a thing people need to think about, right? You share, let's say, company confidential information, just to talk about it at a business level. And that information can be used for training purposes. What that really means is if a new model's built over the next 6 months and you had shared, 2026 roadmap for Syngen AI, whatever, a competitor could use ChatGPT 5.1 in January and literally ask, what's Syngen AI working on this year? And get a result. And that result could literally have been the roadmap you shared. That's concerning.
Yes.
Now, there are, potentials to have agreements in place with the vendors where they will not train on your data set. And I think that those agreements are good if you think that that's a worthy risk. But, how many times have there been prior agreements where a lawsuit uncovers that the agreement wasn't honored? Do you want to risk your personal private information, et cetera, et cetera? Now, whether that's your individual, you talked about like mental health and therapy, right? Do you want to tell the robot, the machine, your therapy information so that it's out there and available for any nefarious use? I don't know that that's common. My point is simply, I don't think people spend too much time thinking about the security side of
Right.
the AI part. But the other piece that you mentioned, I wanted to comment on, where people are sort of using the AI for therapy and then maybe getting caught up in it, or maybe doing some things that are probably a little above and beyond that they don't need to do or they shouldn't do. I look at it from this perspective. Therapy in and of itself is hard for everybody. There's actually quite a lot of data about how difficult it is for a person to find the right therapist for them. And in some cases, you're talking to multiple, you're trying a lot till you get the thing that clicks. And then there's this, patient confidentiality component of therapy, et cetera, right? Okay. Is it easier to talk to an inanimate object that can have language skills and that can communicate with you? Does it take less effort on your part? And is there I don't have to talk to another real human and share this particular thoughts where they can judge me. I'm talking to this inanimate object that tends to not judge. It tends generally, high level assumptions and generalizations. It tends to be somewhat helpful and, oh, okay, well, I see why you might think that. Here's what other people have said, et cetera, right? I see how easy that would be for people to do, right? And then very quickly you get to, why do I want to pay for a therapist who's had all kinds of training, but we'll leave that part alone, when I'm getting generic results and advice from the robot, and it seems to be sufficient. And the problem is it's never going to be sufficient. Let me rephrase. It's sufficient for like a basic question, right? A friend said something to me the other day and I didn't feel good about it. What should I do? Oh, okay. The LLM can probably answer that one, especially if you're relatively young, and give you decent enough advice and get you over the hump of that weekend's upset, whatever, because that's not like a life-threatening or whatever. But something critical and important that's going to take time to address, I'm not sure that the AI is the best animal to address it. I did have a really good set of conversations with someone who was using AI in a clinical setting as an assistant and using it the same way that you're using it for suggestions for travel locations. Was like, hey, I have this person presenting with these types of things. What novel treatments could I try? What other ways, like how could I talk to them differently? And
Here's a couple of things that I've been presented with, because this is true of PR work as well. Here's an interesting client challenge, or here is some information that a patient has just presented to me. What am I missing? What am I not thinking about? What are
yeah,
some
yeah.
outside of the box ideas? How can I look at this from a different perspective? What's another way to look at this? I find that, especially in my business, very helpful. It's really great. But what I like about that is, I've been doing this for 20 years. And so I'm coming to ChatGPT for some suggestions, not necessarily the solution. I'm coming to ChatGPT to say, I thought of these 3 ideas. What am I missing? What else can I do? Then I'll take that feedback and say, I like this part of it. I don't like that part of it. Let me combine this with what I was already thinking. And because you know the industry and because you know the work and you know your client and you know what you're trying to accomplish, then I find that to be incredibly helpful. And so if someone who's studied this, went to school for it, they know psychology, they know therapy, they know this topic, and they're asking ChatGPT for some advice, they can take that as an idea that they can then use or filter through their own trained mind, their understanding, right? So
Yeah.
I think as an assistant, it's great.
I agree with that, but I do think we're moving into the agentic world where things are going to get more complicated.
And when you say complicated, what do you mean? What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on how this is progressing?
So let's just baseline real quick. So the existing use of ChatGPT and the assistant model that I think a lot of people realize the value of, having this sort of, if you're old school enough, this is encyclopedia knowledge in a system that can talk to you, that can respond to your questions in real time, is amazing. And just sitting there wanting to learn something new or ask questions, or as you're saying, help me brainstorm. I don't think there's ever been anything as valuable.
Right.
It's really powerful. And it doesn't really matter which model you choose. It can all do really good stuff. And most people who've played around with it a little bit are sort of like, what the heck? Now, there's a portion of this that's just a parrot regurgitating information, but there's a portion that's not. There's a portion that's actually, because of the way it's structured, it listens to what you're asking and it responds appropriately where it can. And that's a novel capability. Okay. Agentic AI is different. It still uses the LLM, the chatbot AIs that we have. The key to that functionality that will make sense as I explain agentic here is large language models, LLM, process language. What that means is really that the LLM is capable of processing input and reacting to that input. That input can be you typing, but it could also be instructions on how to use a tool. And this is the world of agentic AI, primarily exposed right now through something known as the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. But we don't even have to talk about that. What we talk about is the fact that agentic AI has access to various tools. Those tools are like software capabilities that the LLM itself doesn't have built in. And this tool exposes itself and says, here's what I am, here's how to use me. And it does that with instructions that are words. And so the LLM can read those instructions and say, oh, this tool can do what I need to do. Here, let me send it my request. So real simple. I can have an agentic system, and there's a lot of different ways to access agentic AI. I don't want to get too deep there, but the idea is an agent system is a system that can take autonomous action for you on behalf of what you've asked it to do. Autonomous action means it can go do something you didn't ask it to do. It's proactive, and this is where things start to get complicated. I can give it instructions in a prompt that end up having it chain together multiple tools to accomplish an objective. I'll give you a simple one right now. Let's say I have access to some tools that let me search for images, let me use maps like Google Maps or something and find locations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I can make an agentic chat prompt that says the following: find the closest Starbucks to this address within 3 miles or less, and then show me pictures of the inside of the nearest store. Now, in and of itself, those are individual queries you could go to Google and process on your own. You'd have to first go to Maps, find it, then go, but you could do it. But the agentic system does it basically all at once. And you just make that simple natural language request, and boom, what you get back is the nearest Starbucks is this address. Here's a link to Maps if you want to map yourself there. And also, here's pictures inside that store.
I could see that being incredibly useful for travel.
Yeah.
Show me the nearest hotel, show me inside the hotel.
Yeah, exactly, right? Now, flip that around, and I'm just trying to give you examples, right? But so in an agentic world, I can say, go to my email, find the last message from Angela talking about the podcast, find the document that she, I mean, we don't have a document, folks. I'm just making this up. Find the document that she sent, go to paragraph 3, summarize it, and give me a chart showing me the information in that paragraph. And I just sit, and the agent does all the work, uses all the right tools, and you get a chart inside of a minute or two.
That's fascinating. So it sounds like a full integration of this has access to all of your things,
It
right?
can and wants to.
Right. You're going to connect your email, you're going to connect your phone, you're going to
Documents.
connect, all of your tools that right now are very separate from me, right? ChatGPT does not
Right.
go into my emails.
Correct.
So that's,
Correct.
yeah, that's super fascinating. So what about memory? Where
Yeah.
are we with because it sounds like that there's a bit of memory capability in that stage in
There
agentic
is.
AI. So talk
There
to me about where are we with memory now, and how soon are we going to get there where we're really remembering, where Allah is really remembering.
Well, okay. So the LLM itself remembering will actually let me give you that structure this way. I'm trying to not waste a lot of your time and give you things you don't need, but I want to explain the right stuff
I
to you.
love all information.
Okay. So there's a thing that's been out for a long time, for decades, known as the Gartner hype cycle. And you can find it, you can search for it right now if you're listening and you want to. Just search on your favorite search engine and you'll see it. It's an image and it's a graph. And the graph is a very high spike, a very low point, and then this slow climb to sort of an equilibrium. What this represents is basically the curve from history for probably 50 plus years of any major innovation, whether it's technical or otherwise, where there's this big hype about how amazing and powerful this innovation is going to save the world, et cetera. That's the big up curve, and it gets to this height of expectations that are impossible. And then shortly after this massive hype cycle, there's this fall back to, it doesn't do any of those things that you said it could do, and that's known as the trough of disillusionment. And then following that is usually where people say, okay, well, what can it really do? And, oh, look, I can do these things with it. And then we build this really amazing capability, and that eventually becomes the plateau of productivity. That's what's labeled on there. So the peak of inflated expectations is the top of the craziness hype, and then the trough of disillusionment, which is where we all are with AI right now, by the way. We're in that trough. Every time you turn around, you're seeing articles about AI failing and projects not working, et cetera. And it's because we've come down from this super high peak of what it could do that it probably couldn't do. And now in this trough of, oh, well, wait a minute, reality is a little different. And we're headed towards this sort of plateau where we get productivity. I bring that up because I want to say, 1983, Motorola invents the cell phone. But other than basic communication and texting, the cell phone didn't do much until Steve and some friends put together the App Store and the iPhone. Now, the iPhone in and of itself is just a cell phone, but it had access to, via the internet, the App Store. So you think about the technology curve for the cell phone, huge peak, then, okay, everybody uses a cell phone things. And then the internet, huge peak, .com bust. Okay, great. And then we start building e-commerce applications and Amazon and all that. Okay, cool. Now we put it in your pocket and you have access to the internet and all these applications and everything else. And that's the plateau of productivity. That's the holy cow. We built on top of the innovation. And right, okay, the innovation is the LLM. Right now, we're still dealing with just basic chatbots. What I think is going to happen, the answer to your memory question, is building on top of the individual innovation of AI itself.
Right.
To get applications, to do things like, so the idea of the agentic chat that I showed you, or the agentic model I talked about, and chaining together these tool uses and all these things to do really amazing stuff, is kind of like what you would have envisioned you wanted Iron Man's Jarvis to be able to do, right? Or what you had hoped that, like Apple's assistant, whose name I'm not going to say out loud, or Google's assistant, or whatever, Amazon's, you would have wanted them to do those things, but they couldn't do those things when they were introduced, right? But they will be able to because of agentic, and there is a perfect place to land memory, in the assistant, right? So the assistant sits on top as an application layer that uses AI and agentic tooling and all the rest of that stuff, and it has the memories. And so, and if you just think of the model in the same mental space as, an assistant at work, whatever that title ends up being, the really poor model is, the assistant always knows your coffee order. Yeah, I don't like that one. It's demeaning in a lot of ways, but it's the accuracy, right? But we'll go back to the plane flight. The assistant knows your preferences with respect to seating, but the assistant should be smart enough to say, well, when traveling with your spouse, your seating preference changes. When traveling alone, when traveling on a small plane, your seating like those are the memories. Yeah.
Right. It's nuance.
Oh, very much, very
Yeah, it's
much.
nuance. Yeah.
And we're not there today. Because
How long do you think before we get there? I love that you talk about how, this trough of disillusionment and stuff. I'm still excited. It's quite impressive that just, I think, 4 years ago, we no idea what this is, and here we are. So how quickly do you think we'll get there?
So there's already agentic systems you can use today that are available as products you can sign up for as a website that have a lot of this functionality. But I don't think it's mainstream for everyone quite yet. But I would be surprised if within the next year it's not accessible to everyone.
Within a
But
year?
oh yeah, easily. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You might see some before the end of this year. Yeah, we're very, very close already. It'll be nascent. It'll make all kinds of mistakes. It won't be amazing.
Of
It'll be
course.
version ones, not version threes, right?
Yeah. I still think it's gonna be amazing. I think all of this is amazing still. When ChatGPT was kind of pushed on you, right? Because it was just one day I refreshed and it was ChatGPT 5, and I remember on Reddit, people were just freaking out. "I want ChatGPT 4 back." I'm like, "Guys, I'm still impressed that we are even using this," and I think it's amazing how some people are so already entrenched in the different versions.
They
And
get attached very quickly.
yeah, but also to their credit, it's just this deep understanding of its performance. I'm sitting here like, this is answering my questions great, and it's still
Right.
being fast, and that's good enough for
So
me.
what underneath the hood of what the Reddit comment you're making is what happened is that when OpenAI introduced ChatGPT 5, they said they were turning off all the old ones immediately, which they'd never done before. And the problem is a lot of people had applications, not chat, applications code they had written, compiled, and shipped to customers that were relying on OpenAI 4.1 or whatever. And that immediately breaks their application. That's why they were freaking out about it. And that's why OpenAI stopped it.
Well, the folks that I was reading about on Reddit, they weren't even doing that. These are just people that are using it every single day. So I could definitely understand being upset about writing code and shipping it off to clients based on 4.1, and then days later
It gets shut off. Right.
it gets shut off completely. Is it back? 'Cause I haven't even checked. Is it back? Are
Yeah,
the new versions back?
it's back.
Okay.
What's really funny is that a lot of people don't recognize this detail. And again, I know I'm a nerd, but ChatGPT 5 is actually a router. It in and of itself doesn't answer questions. It routes your question to one of the appropriate models behind the scenes that it's fronting. You don't know that. You don't have to know that. Like, it's not relevant that you need to know that, but that's part of what, and it's part of why ChatGPT 5 was not good the first week or three while they were fixing that routing mechanism, right? And then a lot of people were like, "Wait, dude, we build applications on this stuff. You can't just shut it." And it very much exposed a problem in the app space, which is you can't rely on the vendor keeping the model around. You have to
Right.
build flexibility, and people hadn't been doing that. So now lots of folks have been scrambling for the last 3 months, trying to be like, okay, we need to be model agnostic. We need to be able to flip models anytime. The other thing that's really weird, and there's a bunch of research doing this, and I'm sure there'll be papers coming out every month almost. People have been using the same prompt against each model revision and tracking how the model's responses change to the same input from version to version to version to version, which will end up giving us a little insight into how the training is going, what the methodologies are, how the models are being modified with respect to how they're being built, et cetera. I know quite a number of folks who have what they're referring to as a brand standard or brand protection prompt, where they're prompting for information about their company from every model they can get their hands on to see what it says.
That's a great segue into my question about GEO and it replacing SEO. And that's something I'm extremely fascinated with at the moment. I think, especially, there's a lot of conversation around it in the PR space. It's kind of like the next frontier of findability and relevance and all of these types of things on the internet and creating content so that it's good for GEO and all of this. Talk to me about, give me your insights on GEO, and I'd love your take on what someone like me working in communications and marketing and PR should be doing.
The idea of, I've seen AEO or AIEO as well, even though GEO is generative engine optimization. I'm sorry.
No, I'm laughing because, sorry, I have a 2-year-old and you just said EIO and
EIO, you got it. You got
I'm
it.
just thinking old McDonald's. Sorry.
AIEIO. Yeah, no, it's fine. It makes perfect sense.
Tell me you're a toddler mom without telling me you're a toddler mom. Okay, so
No. So I think for the audience, right? So search engine optimization for a long time has been about keyword optimization, has been about
yes.
making sure your website has the correct keywords when someone goes to Google and searches for keywords. Your website comes up. That's how you rank. That's how you get sales. That's how your website shows up on the first page of the results. Search engine optimization. But a lot of people aren't using search engines as the front door to the internet anymore. A lot of people are using their AI chat, right?
Exactly.
And AIs don't keyword search. They actually do something called semantic search. And semantic search, the difference between keyword searching and semantic searching, or lexical searching, because that's what keyword searching is I look for the existence of this word or these words on the page. But for semantic searching, I look for similar meaning to the phrase or words you typed, which could include synonyms or completely different phrasing, but it's the same basic thought process, which is wildly more complicated to figure out, but super valuable. And that's part of why LLMs are so helpful to us, because they're not doing keywords, they're doing semantic. However, how do you search when you're not looking for keywords anymore? Does your website need to now have semantic relevance? Yes, it does. In fact, for a long time, websites have had a file called robots.txt that could inform the crawling robot that would do the indexing, the back end of Google, how to index your site, give it keywords and all sorts of other useful information. There's now an LLMs.txt file that your website can have, which informs the LLM about your website semantically. But I actually think the crux of your conversation leans more towards the agentic problem. Here's what I mean. You probably still need to do SEO, because at some point, some part of the population is not going to switch over to using AI all the time. They're going to be what we refer to as Luddites technologically, but they're not Luddites, but just people who are like, I don't really jive with, I like Google searching or whatever. Okay. So SEO doesn't go away. It becomes less relevant for a lot of reasons, but fine. GEO or any version of that has its place, but let me paint this picture and see how weird this becomes. Given the agentic model I gave you and the idea that tools can be used, I can just say this following phrase in my agentic system. I want you to find 3 best vendors by price, so 3 cheapest priced vendors offering this product. Pick a product, get me some pictures, rank them for me, and give me purchase links. And the agentic system will do the things that are necessary to do all of that and come back with, here's 3 vendors. And then you can tell Jarvis or your assistant, whatever, buy the second one. And you may never, ever go to the website. You may never touch Amazon and still purchase something. You may never go to walmart.com or whatever.
Yeah.
So now the question is, does SEO have any relevance in this agentic model where people aren't clicking, going to a website, finding a product and buying it? Instead, their agent is doing things, and most often that agentic interaction is via an API or some other methodology, and the UI is not even used, which from a lot of business owner perspective is like, wait, what? My website's my thing. So what I think is going to have to happen is, and we're still nascent in figuring this out. There's plenty of conversations happening. It's not the first podcast where I've tried to talk about this with folks, because this question is forefront for right now, for sure. I think your website's going to have more than just SEO relevance. It's going to have contextual semantic relevance. I think what's going to be more useful are longer, non-keyword focused product descriptions, company descriptions, service descriptions, so that when the searching is happening at the generative AI level, it's doing a semantic indexing. And when the user prompt is, find me a vendor that offers this, your long form content is what's going to inform the AI that you're the person or company to send the user to, or provide the link from, or provide the product link to, or whatever's being asked, right?
Right.
Does that make sense at a high level?
Yeah, no, it actually makes perfect sense. And I could see some of these bigger box retailers and the Amazons, when you search for, find me, recently I was looking for a white skirt, and I could see where I would go into AI and say, I need this type of white skirt, find me the best priced one and send me pictures of it. And then the AI does its thing, and here comes the Amazon, Walmart, Target, whatever links. Would it be a link, or would it be the cart? Would it be a link that takes me to the cart, or would it actually already be the cart? Do I even need to leave the AI model to purchase?
No, I don't see any reason why you would leave, because your agentic AI system has your purchase information, just like your browser has your credit card stored, right? Same structure. So you'll just tell your agent what you want and tell it to buy it, and you won't necessarily have to be involved in the specifics of the transaction. And here's where I think I can't predict this answer. I can see there's multiple futures, so I'll tell you what some of the futures that I see. Who knows what I don't know that I'll be right or wrong. A lot of the things on Amazon are not sold by Amazon, right? They're sold by third parties that are listing on Amazon. But why can't those third parties make their listings available agentically and skip the Amazon middleman?
But would it still, I see what you're saying. So instead of, because right now there's third-party vendors saying, this is this is the best way for people to find me, is I'm going
Right.
to list my
Right.
product. And I know that Amazon, you could either have them actually physically store your product,
Correct.
or
And ship it.
you would
Yep.
receive the order and then you ship it yourself, or
Right.
Amazon would ship it for you, which is its own separate business. I went to one of those Amazon tour things, and I learned
Right.
a little bit more about how.
FBA, fulfilled by Amazon.
Exactly. And
Right.
so, but you see, this is what I mean. What you're saying is that third-party vendor, yeah, they'll still probably leave it. Do you think they would leave it on Amazon and then just go, or would they be optimizing their own site now and their own content so that the AI can now find it? If I search for the white skirt and it's being sold by this clothing brand, small little teeny clothing brand, the Googles of the world gives me the Amazon link to it.
It does.
But what you're saying is this, through this agent, I'm essentially going to get this small boutique.
I think the opportunity exists, yeah, and this is the trick. So I'll describe
That's
it
a
this way.
game changer for.
Oh yeah,
That's a
yeah.
huge disruption
Right.
for these huge retailers, right, that have an online presence.
The reason third parties list their products on Amazon is because that's where everyone goes to shop. Like, let's go back 20 years or 30 years. The reason everybody went to Sears or Kmart or Walmart is because that's where the products were, not because they cared about Walmart explicitly. Not that they had a reason to be negative, but like, this is over here.
Yeah,
If we go
I can see all
further and
my
further
options
back,
in this store.
exactly,
I can
right.
see what all the shoes are
And
by
that's
just.
why big box stores existed, because prior to that, it was a mall. All the various options were the individual stores in the mall, and then the anchors at the end of the mall had a lot of variety, right? Big department stores, which are dead now. Why are they dead now? Big box stores. No, Amazon or Walmart.com or BestBuy.com, right? But the point is,
Right.
think of those sites as aggregators, because that's what they are. They're aggregators. It's where people go to shop, right? So at one point in the past, you always wanted to be in the mall because everybody went to the mall to shop. Nobody uses malls anymore. It's 2025. I got it. But in 1985, you were nothing if you weren't in the mall. Okay.
I think
Well,
the malls are making a little bit of a comeback, but
they are a little, but people are still buying all over. I mean, just ask all the websites and all the apps like Shane and all those things. Okay. When you're agentic, the aggregation point is now the chat. And you don't have to go search for the thing where you think it might be. You just search for the thing, and the agent goes and finds it in a lot of different ways. So does the agentic chat model bring about the opportunity for the small vendors to be able to compete without the necessity of being on the big platforms, or maybe not being on the platforms as much, or maybe raising their prices on the big platforms and lowering their prices on their personal purchasing system. And I don't know that, there's intricacies here, but you get the idea. I think the aggregation point is starting to change. I know I'm super early because I'm AI nerd crazy, and okay, fine, but I'm seeing as people start using AI for more of their on-ramp, these agentic systems will end up offering very compelling merged capability. And think of it like this. We're already having an attention span problem and have for a while.
Yes.
I was just having a conversation yesterday that the average number of times an advertiser needs to put something in front of someone, depending on the topic, is 8 to 20 views. And the average length of those views is now 3 seconds or less because people don't look for any longer than that. In that world, I would be thinking about as a seller of something, how do I get myself available in the agentic systems where when people ask for it, boom, I'm one of the things that pops up, because this advertising model seems to be failing, right? Who can handle a 3 second? Can you get a message across in 3 seconds? Like, it seems not, and the amount of noise that's going to generate, because it's, people are going to be like, oh, I got to get 25 impressions to get them to see me, so I'm just going to bombard everybody everywhere. That's the strategy that seems not to get people's attention. It seems it's going to drive it the other way.
So what's your advice for marketers?
Yeah, right. Fantastic. I can't, I hear you. I'll give thoughts, right? I obviously don't know what the heck I'm talking about, but, and I'm not a marketeer, but
you bring an interesting perspective that I think, being so ingrained and having such a deep understanding of AI, that it's great to hear what you think is a way that can this new world, this next phase that we're going to be entering, this next chapter, which seems right around the corner. I think your insights on what that means for marketing, I think, are really interesting.
here's my gut. My gut is, if you need to get 25 impressions in front of someone in order for them to pay attention to you, and those impressions are 3 seconds or so, the number of advertisers that are going to chase those numbers is going to make the average duration get lower, because people are going to have less and less attention span because they're going to be bombarded. So that 3 seconds is going to become 1 second. And that number of impressions is going to go from 25 to 75 or some number. I don't know what those numbers are, but right, I can extrapolate those. The science is pretty simple here, because attention span is just going to keep getting worse. It feels like that's not the correct approach. It feels like that approach should be abandoned in lieu of something more engaging. What does more engaging look like? Well, I don't know if it's back to the sort of the sponsor model where here's this compelling content and it's brought to you by X, and that's all you say. Brought to you by X, leave it alone, right? That's one way. Maybe that doesn't fit for everybody. I understand. And, like impulse shop, whatever, that doesn't work. But I think you have to build brand and recognition, and you have to do it in a more upfront way. I don't think the idea that I'm just going to pummel your eyeballs with this logo or whatever is the correct structure, right?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I do agree with you on that. I also think this is why I'm seeing, and what I think is going to be kind of the counter to this is in person, in person experiences that help to ground a new branding concept or marketing concept. Because just like we saw this kind of Zoom fatigue, I think we're going to see a bit of, as you're explaining this, if it's done wrong. I mean, we're already seeing a lot of people talk about, like, the evolution of this AI slop, right? Everyone's just having all these articles generated by AI and just throwing it out there into the world, and it's just creating all of this extra noise, where I could see something, as you're explaining, something similar happen in this marketing space, where everyone's just getting bombarded because of the attention span problem. But I can also see a space where the counter to that is in person experiences, in-person events that help to ground people in what you're trying to market, what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I think, I'm about to fall off the cliff of things that I should be talking about because I'm not talking about AI for a second here. But I think people would probably respond better to sort of a brand relationship than than again just being bombarded with a logo and a buy button. What I mean by that is, this is what the brand's about. These are the types of things we sponsor. Come check this out on us. Those sorts of things that are more engaging and less the here scroll and buy, which I know lots of people are making money with, but there's a very logical conclusion to that, which ends with people stop, right? There's fatigue eventually with scroll and buy for everybody.
Yes.
And
yes.
Right now, it seems like everyone's milking as much as they can out of that for the moment, but then you're going to have all your customers are burnt out because you've bought them, right? And so they're going to be looking for what's the next thing, and that next thing, I'm hoping, can be more engagement. And I don't necessarily mean it needs to be more expensive on the advertiser. That's not what I'm trying to get at, but more give the user something to experience, something to do, something to interact with, etc.
I agree. And then it becomes a balance because AI is not going anywhere, right? It's here to stay. That's it. This is where we are. And so I definitely see a world where it's a combination of really grounding your brand in something that people can truly get to know and identify with and connect with. And then taking that and nourishing it and enhancing that relationship with AI, making it something where it's a seamless process where I think AI can really be a tool that helps customers better connect with the brand if done right and feel more connected than ever and feel because now we're getting like personalization to the next level with brand experiences. And from a PR side, I like to think a lot about what does that mean for a brand and that brand relation? Because it doesn't have to just be products, it can be reputational, what that brand means for people that are going to be engaging with that brand. And I could really see a space where AI, when in its best use case, is helping to nourish and create a better dynamic for that customer, for that end user. And also, there is still room for, and I think as a marketer, where I think this is where AI can really help is to create that sense of delight, right? I think this concept of delight is never going to go away. I think customers love to feel special. They love to feel surprised in the best ways. And I could really see a space where AI is bringing all of that together and just making really unique and beautiful experiences for people when done correctly.
As you were talking, I was just thinking that one of the things that might be interesting is if the brand had an AI focused, bear with me while I explain this thought out, an AI focused chatbot, not for individual users on their website to talk to, but for the agentic AI to interact with and ask questions about and interrogate and learn, in order for the agentic AI to be able to represent to its user, here's this brand etc. I've communicated it, right? Like instead of a push model, it can be a pull model.
I love
So the
that.
push model is sending out the brand logo and the buy button, right? And the pull model is, hey, my user's looking for these things.
Yes.
Are these things you have? And the AI response, right? Okay.
I think that's brilliant. I agree.
Just a thought. Remember, I don't even play a marketer on the internet. I'm literally just a goofball talking out loud. All right. Well, we've had a heck of a conversation. Actually, it went by pretty quickly.
It did. This is great.
It was fun. I really enjoyed it. Did you have any last question or thought you wanted to throw out?
No, I just want to say thank you for sharing so many insights and teaching me a couple of things about AI, where it's going. I'm fascinated with it, and I want to continue to build out and develop a deeper understanding of what AI really means for humanity in
Yeah,
general.
no, I hear you. Yeah.
Because it really is touching every aspect of our lives, and it's great that people like you that have been there since the beginning, because your background is so fascinating with just being in the tech space since
1995.
like the early days.
Very much
It's
so.
just wild that it was only 1995, the early days, right? Not that long ago. But it's great that people like you are out there breaking all this down and making sense of it and helping people like me better understand what it means in an industry. So I just think it's great. Your podcast is great, and it's just wonderful that you're out here breaking it down, making this content. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all the very kind words. And thanks for being a guest and asking great questions and having a good conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.